Joe, I want to come back to you and talk about something that I heard you say in South Carolina that has stayed with me for a long time. This generation could be called the opt-in generation because every website that they go to, they have to allow cookies, they have their information stored. They have to consent to all sorts of things. And they expect that now, that is truly libertarianism, because libertarianism is consent culture. I wonder if you could elaborate on that idea a little bit.
Sure. So I teach psychology at Clemson, and I read a great book by a social psychologist named Jean Twenge. And the reason she calls them the iGen generation, she points out that this is about the most libertarian group coming up through the ranks, that they look at gay marriage and they say, well, of course, why shouldn't you be able to marry who you want? And then they look at guns and say, well, yeah, why shouldn't you own a gun if you want to own a gun? They were raised on computers. So the first generation who has had computers, cell phones the entire time that they've known, since they were pretty much alive. When you go on a website, you get to opt in. Those of us who are older, we never had that. There were mailing lists and people calling on the old landline phone. And so the newer generation, they got used to, nope, don't want that, nope, don't want that, don't want that. And they would just go after what they do want. Even look at their news. I was raised on news from the TV, and you watch it for half an hour. Maybe you don't like this story, but guess what? You have to sit there and listen to it for a couple minutes, because then you got to wait for the next story. But the current iGen generation, they just go to the news website. Nope, I want that one. I want that one. I want that one. It's like their entire lives have been a menu. And the Libertarian Party is great for that, because that is our message. You only opt in to what you want to opt in for.
They are naturally anti-authoritarian. Like you said, everything is opt-in. Everything is whether you choose or not. You have so many different choices to choose from. They tend to be very anti-authoritarian in how they approach things. The challenge with younger people is that because this system has completely left most of them behind, especially those that are going through the college system and everything else, they are very prone and very receptive to things like, for example, free college or Medicare for all, these so-called, free programs, because it sounds good to them. It sounds like, well, because the system has left me behind in a way that it didn't leave my parents or grandparents behind, they're going to be taxed basically to give me the things that I should have had. Because they already have that natural, decentralized, lots of choices, anti-authoritarian way of looking at things, it's very easy to message to them. So for example, with college students, I'd ask them what their biggest concerns were, and almost all of them said, student loan debt. Am I going to be able to get a job in my chosen field once I get out so I can pay all this student loan debt? And I would say, what are you majoring in? And they'd tell me, and almost always whatever they were majoring in was specifically for whatever their chosen field of work was. And I'd say, well, let me ask you something. What if instead of having to spend 4 to 8 years in university and run up 5 or 6 figures of student debt, what if instead you could do like a voluntary apprenticeship or internship program with people who are in the type of business that you want to get into, where you would apprentice directly under them or intern directly under them, and you do it for free or a small stipend, but you wouldn't be running up, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and it wouldn't take you 4 to 8 years. It would take you considerably less time and cost you far less. And until you reached a point of mastery within that chosen field of work, where the consensus within that profession was that you had met that level of mastery where you can now do it professionally, either yourself or under someone else. And they all said, that's a great idea, but I can't do that. And I'd say, but why? And they'd say, well, because I have to go to college. And I'd say, but why? And they said, because I have to get a degree. And I'd say, but why? And that's when they got it. Because of bad, arbitrary, centrally planned decisions that were made on their behalf by government, that in order to do the type of work they wanted to do, they had to go through a certain amount of schooling to get a certain type of degree, to be able to get a certain type of license. Once you speak to them that way, now all of a sudden they don't want free college. They want the government to stop telling them how to get into their chosen field of study or chosen field of work.
The messaging that people have been getting from the existing government has been, let us tell you how it's supposed to be, as opposed to the libertarian message where we say, let us tell you what your options are.